Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico. Got a great show for you tonight. I'm very excited to have four wonderful lady golf professionals as my Coach's Corner panel tonight. I'm going to introduce you to them in just a moment. And then a little bit later on in the show, I'm going to be excited to have joined me a very special guest, Brett Freeman, and I'll tell you a little bit about him later in the show. But let me just remind everybody, of course, we are live every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central here on the blogtalkradio.com network. And the best way to find us is go to blogtalkradio.com, and up in the search key, just type Golf Talk Live, and that will take you to the main page for the show. And for some reason, if you can't join us live on Thursdays, you can just visit that link and scroll down to the on-demand section. And as I've mentioned many times before, all of the shows are auto-recorded, so you can listen to them when it's convenient for you, especially for those of you in different time zones. So, but for those of you joining us live tonight, I want to thank you from literally all around the globe. Some other great ways that you can tune in as well is you can go to iTunes.com, Stitcher.com, or now TuneIn.com, and under the podcast section, you can just, again, type in Golf Talk Live, and you can listen under some other great social media platforms as well. As I mentioned, always excited to have the Coach's Corner panel. We've got a very special panel here this evening, and I'm going to introduce you again in just a moment here, but let me just again remind everybody, of course, we are live. If you want to call into the show at any time during the live broadcast, you're welcome to do so by simply calling the main line, which is area code 646-716-4667, or you can also email me any questions or comments about the show to me personally. My email address is ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And, of course, I update on all social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, and also on LinkedIn. So just visit any of the links for the show. On Facebook, it's Golf Talk Live blog. My Twitter handle is Ted and Buck CEO, CEO being in capital letters. And under my personal name, Ted Odorico, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. So for any of you that surf, if you will, those social media platforms, you can get all kinds of information of who my guests are going to be for each and every week. So make sure you check them out there. As I mentioned, I've got some great young ladies on my Coach's Corner panel tonight, very special Coach's Corner, and very honored to have all of them. So let me just tell you a little bit about them, and then we'll get into our discussion for this evening. Of course, this first young lady has been on the show a number of times. In fact, she comes back every year. And a very interesting note, she was actually my very first official guest on Golf Talk Live 6 years ago. And her name is Nicole Weller. She's the head teacher professional at the Landings Club in, of course, beautiful Savannah, Georgia. And she's also a member of the LPGA Teaching and Club Professional PGA of America, as well as the Proponent Group. Also joining on the panel is Michelle Holmes. She's the Director of Instruction for the Michelle Holmes School of Golf, and she's also an LPGA teaching professional and top 50 U.S. kids instructor. Also rounding out the panel is Zoe Allen, PGA teacher professional at the Lurgan Golf Club in Ireland. So we've got somebody from overseas. And last but not least is Anna Deletta Daffin, who is a golf instructor as well at the Anna Deletta Golf School from Italy. So we've got two calling from overseas to join us on this Coach's Corner. So I'm very, very excited about tonight. Something else, too, that I want to mention before I bring them on is they're all certified conductors on the Little Golf Train, which is a great organization that Nicole started a few years back, and all of these ladies are taking part in that particular project. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. So let me welcome them out here, and we'll start our discussion on the panel discussion tonight. Ladies, welcome to the Coach's Corner on Golf Talk Live.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Yes, thank you.
All right. My
Thank
pleasure,
you,
ladies.
everybody.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. So we're all here. We're all ready to go. So, Nicole, as I mentioned off air, we're going to start with you. And I think just for those that maybe are new tuning into the show that maybe haven't heard you before, talk about this. We're going to talk a little bit, of course, about the certification process and so forth. But specifically, what's the purpose? First off, what is the Little Golf Train and what's its purpose?
So good question, and I first have to thank all the ladies for being on tonight, especially Anna and Zoe, who are overseas at midnight and 1 a.m. So probably a first time to talk about golf this early in the morning for them, but huge shout out to everybody for taking time. Thank you. And, last year I was on with Dr. Patricia Donnelly, who is the founder of Little Golf Train, and I'm the co-founder. And we really teamed up about, it must be like 4 or 5 years ago to start the conceptual idea. And basically, Little Golf Train is a concept to help pros learn how to work appropriately with ages 2 to 5-year-olds. So a lot of other sports do that. Golf has kind of been a little bit late in that. So we put together a certification program to help pros online learn about the ropes behind the process, the theory and the safety and the nutrition and the background. And we also provide curricula for ages 2 to 3 and then 4 to 5 in different venues. And also a kit. So if a pro needs a kit with all the equipment, we have it readily available. It's a kit of convenience. So we just want to get some information out there for pros to learn how to work with families at their facilities.
Well said. And I think what's really interesting about this particular program, Nicole, as you sort of alluded to, there are a lot of great teaching and coaching programs for juniors, but this really gets them, obviously, number one, at a very, very early age, and provides not just a fantastic program to be offered to the students, but also a way for other golf professionals like yourself in the industry to really, find ways of learning to work with such a young age group, because obviously it's not very easy for a lot of people, and you offer some different steps and process for that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And one thing I found very interesting, I went on, of course, to the website for Little Golf Train, and there are actually several steps, in fact 6 to be exact, along the way to becoming a Little Golf Train certified conductor. I like the fact that you use the terminology conductor as opposed to instructor. Kind of adds a cute little twist to it. Talk a little bit about the steps and the process. So for those coaches that might be listening to the show this evening, what some of the processes it is to go through to becoming a certified conductor on the Little Golf Train.
Sure, and Patricia and I came up with, a couple different ideas, and we ended up with the online certification. Hopefully it'll help people from having to travel to locations and whatnot. So the online option was really good. We do actually a live workshop now. During PGA Show Week, we do a 3-hour session there. So the live has been really fun, and like seeing Anna was there, Zoe, Michelle, it's kind of like seeing, like your golf sisters and sharing ideas, and it was really neat to see them in person and share that. So, when someone's interested, they go online to littlegolftrain.com. We have a lot of information there. We also have characters that we build out to help teach interpersonal skills or nutrition or fitness or those kind of aspects. And the eager elephant works on the swing as well and the golf portion. But they sign up, and there's a payment process there. It's typically $6.95, but we do have a coupon for the first 50 instructors who sign up, and so we can provide that coupon if they send an email information to info@littlegolftrain.com, and so they would put that payment in, and then they get a background check would be something they would go through next, and once it's cleared, then we're able to give them the information to go online and start the online certification and studying, and so I think we had one person go through it in a couple of days. And then some people go through it in a few weeks and maybe in a few months. It just depends on, how quickly they want to read through it. But the online is pretty cool. It's you read the information, and then we have these fun little pop-up quizzes, so you can't go forward until you get the right answer. It's just kind of learning. And at the end, you have your master test. And from there, you're going to learn about theory, nutrition, working with children, the behind the scenes, the safety. We're working on the golf module as well. And once you're fully passed, then you become a online certified conductor on our Little Golf Train. We have a lot of golf themes. And from there, you have access to all the online information with the agendas and the schedules and the teaching program, and you have the access to buy the kit. We only provide it to our certified conductors.
Right. And let me ask you this, Michelle, I think is an obvious, or sorry, Nicole, I apologize. I haven't moved on to Michelle yet. Nicole, you obviously have a lot of great coaches and teacher professionals out there that work with junior golfers, which is, of course, the theme on Coach's Corner tonight. What are some of the things that you're looking for, when sort of selecting some of the teachers and coaches that you invite into this program? Because obviously there's certain key elements that maybe you're looking for, because it may not be for everybody. I mean, it's a great program, but not every golf instructor out there may work as well or as proficiently with the junior golfers as they do with, sort of our run-the-mill everyday golfers. So are there specific things that you're looking for or that you encourage them to make sure they understand before they take on this journey?
No, that's a good question. And I think, as far as, we're looking for people who are interested in helping kids learn about life through golf, giving them a really cool environment in which to do that, very much like a preschool environment, but it's all done through golf. And it's more about life lessons than just hitting a ball. This is so not adult. And we've got to get out of the adult hat and put on the kid's hat to learn this. So, it's not just for a PGA or LPGA professional. It could be a golf professional. It could be a coach. It could be, somebody who's very interested in helping develop their program, even a great volunteer. So, going through the background check and then getting certified is key there. Even somebody at the YMCA could do that. But I know it's not for everyone, and we talk about that. It's, not everyone's cup of tea. Everybody has their interest and niche. So if it's not your thing, that's really cool, but find somebody who can help you build this out, because other sports have figured it out. There's a big need for it to get kids into sports and into activities, and there are really good ways to do it. And, finding someone on your team who's great at it, whether it's a youth person or a player development type of person, somebody who has that interest. Could be a school teacher who has the summers off, and you kind of work something out, and that person helps the program with his or her background. So we're looking for people who want to engage and have a great time with the kids and families, that get down on their level, that do things with colors and numbers and counting and things that are going to be very interesting to a youngster at that age, and really understand that it is so not adult. If it's a reverse grip or if it's just putting the ball in the hole by squatting next to it, that's cool. They got the concept, ball and hole. But the way they do it is going to be so kid-oriented, and we want somebody who's, almost a fun kid themselves to have a good time with it,
Right. Yeah, I agree, and I think a lot of it stems to the personality of the instructor or coach. And again, there's a lot of great golf professionals out there, but as you pointed out, we all have to address our own niche, if you will, and that may not be for everybody, but that doesn't mean that if you know somebody that's in the golf profession, it may not be something that's best suited for you, let's say, but you may know somebody in the profession that might be of interest. So you want to make sure you pass this information around, and we'll give you the website information again as we go through the show. So just because it may not be your cup of tea, as it will, doesn't mean that you might not know somebody else that you could refer to it. So we'll do that as we progress. All right, I want to move on to Michelle Holmes, of course. Michelle, again, welcome to the show. And, on this theme of junior golf, I found it very interesting. I went to your website, and you have specific goals for your junior golf camps, and I wanted to touch on just a few of them here and kind of get your thought and feedback, and then, obviously your thoughts about the little golf train as well. And the first thing that I noticed under your goals is obviously you've derived that it's important that we teach many of the fundamentals of the golf swing, everything from pitching, chipping, and putting in a fun, inspiring, and in a learning atmosphere. Why does that become, do you think, an important issue when working with juniors, as opposed to some of our traditional teaching methods that we often use? Why is that important to sort of put it in that frame?
Well, I think to keep kids involved in the sport, and we have to keep it fun and we have to keep it engaging. And the mission of the Michelle Home School of Golf is to create experiences that encourage kids to play the game forever. And I think, my goal isn't always to create, a world championship golfer. My goal is to create a golfer that's going to play for the rest of their lives.
Right, and you obviously want them to, as we all know, kind of get bitten by the bug, if you will. And if they're not in a fun learning environment, they're obviously, as I'm sure you all know, it's going to leave somewhat of a bad taste in their mouth, and they're not likely to continue on with the game. So give us an example of some things that you like to do and how you engage, because it isn't, as I said, it isn't easy teaching juniors because, especially at a very young age, because their attention span, they can get distracted very easy. What kinds of games, maybe give us some examples of types of things that you do in your programs to kind of help keep them on track, and traditionally, what is the typical length of time that you allot to some of these things in order to not get too drawn out and lose their interest?
Okay, so I have a couple of different things I'd like to touch on there. One of the first things we do when a child comes to our program, we really want to make sure that they're in the right program for them. So we spend a lot of time sitting down with the parent and the child and just making sure that we're all on a common goal here. We've all got the same journey in mind. I know one mistake I would have made as an instructor at the beginning was I just thought every child wanted to be the best golfer on the planet. And where I've realized now that that's not everyone's goal. Some people are just in it for extracurricular activity, or some people want to go on and compete at the World Championships and whatnot. But I think it's very important to sit down with the parent and child and make sure the three of us are on the same plan, if that makes sense.
No, that's perfect sense. Let me ask you sort of a follow-up question, just since you brought it up about parents. And obviously we're talking about a little bit older, kids, obviously, at 2 and 3 years old, they're not thinking about, playing in the next, PGA or LPGA event at that point. They're just more or less looking to have some fun. But there comes a point in time that maybe their skill level is such that there's some interest there, and there's certainly a level of, and I hate to use this word, but competence, if you will, in their ability, that maybe they might say, hey, you know what, this is something I could sort of run with and develop into a very good game. But then parents kind of sometimes creep in there as well and push the child. How do you find a balance with the parents and the child to make sure that the parents don't get too aggressive and end up pushing the child beyond their abilities?
I just think it's that constant communication, that constant open communication between the child and the parent, and just involving the parent in the process. And when I do classes, I don't necessarily have my parents there in the class, but what I often do is I'll have the parents come out for maybe 15 minutes after the class or the lesson, and I'll have the child teach the information they've learned back to the parents. And it just gives me a good idea, is the child understanding the information we're giving them? And it really gets the parent invested in exactly where we are and how fast or how slow we're progressing.
Right. And I agree with that, and I think everyone on the panel would probably agree that, it's about finding a balance. It's about keeping those lines of communication between the parents and the child. But it's also, I think, and I think everybody, again, would agree that you as the coach have to have sort of alone time with the student to be able to foster some of the development that you want to have there without, always worrying about interference or, pressure from the parents. And that there's a time and a place when they need to step back and allow you to do your job, if you will. So that obviously, I think we would all agree that becomes an important issue as well. Just a sort of a final thought, Michelle, and then I'm going to move on and give Zoe an opportunity to jump in here, and then we'll talk to Anna as well. The last one, Michelle, I want to talk to you about is obviously you emphasize through your programs a strong focus, if you will, on the etiquette and the rules of the game. Now, obviously, at a very early age, sometimes they can be a little bit confusing, but at the same time, it is important that we start them at a very early age to understand that there are rules and there is a certain etiquette. So how do you manage that without sort of talking over the students' heads, given their age?
I guess I try to teach on the golf course as much as possible. I mean, when you're dealing with rules and etiquette, it's not just a matter of handing a child a book or lecturing them on it. But I think if you get them out on the golf course and, if they break a rule out on the golf course, you simply correct them on it. And when they break it on the golf course and they're corrected on it, they're never going to forget that. So I think it's just being active on the golf course with them and kind of letting them learn from their mistakes as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think it's good that they sort of get a taste of obviously the basic rules, and then as they mature and develop, I mean, obviously I'm sure you're able to introduce maybe some more advanced rules and things. I mean, the basic etiquette I think most kids can certainly understand, but there are some more complicated rules and so forth that they're going to have to learn, especially if they're interested in playing more competitive golf as they again develop their games. So that becomes an issue as well, that you want to make sure that they're on the right track. Zoe, I want to move to you to give you an opportunity to jump in here, and then we'll talk to Anna. So Zoe, thank you first off again for joining the program tonight, and I know that you're calling from Ireland, and it's, as Nicole said in the very beginning, it's very late or very early depending on how you look at it. But you also have a junior coaching program that you have as well. And I wanted maybe, for those that maybe aren't understanding what the difference between coaching and an instructor is, how do you define each of them? How do you define more of a coaching style as opposed to just a traditional golf instructor?
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me, Ted. Well, I guess as a coach, you're trying to teach in a way that children or kids don't realize that they're actually being taught. You're trying to let them learn through self-discovery, through playing games. They're coming to a session, for example, for fun, but you're hoping that they are picking up a few things sort of as they go. I guess an instructor was very kind of, if you like, black and white, lining up at a driving range bay, everyone doing the same thing, hitting the same shots, trying to give a few sort of pointers to players. Whereas nowadays, I sort of think the role as a coach has changed. You can set up lots of fun games, activities, and I think you touched on it earlier, Ted, that you have to try and have sort of the next thing set up, the next plan. You don't spend too long on one activity before the kids do get bored, so you have to always have sort of the backup or the next thing ready for them.
Yeah, and again, that I'm sure that's quite a balancing act, and it takes a lot of preparation and timing to think a lot of this thing out. It's not just a matter of, they roll up with their parents and the car doors open and you're ready to go. There's obviously a lot of preparation involved to be able to receive these students and have sort of a game plan. And obviously, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that sometimes depending on how things go, you may even have to adapt your original plan, given the age groups that sometimes you might be dealing with, because you never know. Mishaps can happen, and maybe some uncooperation, if you will, from some of them might creep in. So you might have to adapt on the fly. Does that happen sometimes with the coaching programs?
Yes, most definitely that does happen quite regularly. So you'll try and have a couple of different games set up, always sort of one or two as backup, especially for coaching the younger ones, 3 and 4 year olds. You have to have lots of different stations. That was something we learned in the little golf train, because you never know when they're just going to get fed up with one or get bored. The funny thing is, it could be a game that they loved one week, and you sort of think that's a safe game, I'll play it this week again, and they're not interested. So you always have to kind of be ready, sort of have plenty set up, and maybe even have one or two things sort of in the back burner just in case you need to pull upon those during a session.
Yeah, and again, I think we would all agree that that's something that again, you have to be willing to adapt and make changes on the fly, because I'm sure that happens probably more often than most people think. Let me ask you something. Here in the United States, and Nicole, I think you can probably back me up on this, one of the fastest growing demographics in the golf industry right now is young girls and young women. Are in fact, it's one of the largest, fastest growing demographics new to the game, aging from a range from say 12, 13 years old up into their late 20s, even early 30s. Are young girls, Zoe, in Ireland starting to take an interest in golf, or is it primarily the young boys that you're finding have an interest in getting into the game?
Yeah. I think, Ted, it's a bit of both. Girls aren't just on the increase. I don't think in Ireland as rapidly as what they would be across the water. Definitely a lot of boys, but we do have, girls that are starting to play, and, you sort of find when you get sort of 12, 13-year-old girls in and they then get their friends in, you sort of start something off. So it definitely is in the increase. Not so rapidly just yet, but it's great to see a lot of girls playing, because I know when I was growing up there weren't too many girls that were really playing, so it's nice to see girls having other girls playing the game. So I hope in the next couple of years it definitely will continue to grow.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we're going to see that as more and more, especially through some of the great efforts, and again, Nicole, I know you can attest to this with the LPGA organization, not just at the players level, but at the teaching professional level. There's so many great programs out there that are really inviting to young ladies and trying to get them interested, not just in playing the game, but maybe also interested in teaching. Can you maybe shed a little light on that? Obviously, you're within the LPGA organization, so you have a little bit more insight perhaps than I do. But what are some of the things that you've seen happen over the last few years that are really starting to have an effect on the young girl market?
Well, that's a good question, and one of the biggest impacts, we're seeing a lot more of the girls getting out there, but LPGA has a program called LPGA USGA Girls Golf, and it is tremendous. It was started by Sandy LeBoff. A while ago now. She just needed a program to get her girls going, and LPGA picked up on it. USGA is on. It's tremendous. So they help over 50,000 girls a year. They've helped over 300 or 350,000 girls since the inception, and I think their goal is to get over 100,000 girls golfing a year, and the numbers are getting there. There's over 250, close to 300 chapters around the country. So we have one at the Landings Club on Skidaway Island. I had a really cool one in Knoxville, and now Louise Ball has taken that over, and it's just neat to see. How about for you, Michelle, in your area?
Yeah, we have maybe 3 or 4 different LPGA girls programs within, I'd say, 45 minutes of me, so kicking off here too.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's really nice,
Perfect.
and it focuses a lot on the social part of the game, not just the skill. It's getting the girls out there. It might be arts, it might be crafts, it might be a field trip. It's really come a long way, and they also have regional academies now and a really nice leadership academy. So that program is huge, and anyone, girls starting at age 6, 7, up to the teens should definitely check it out.
Perfect. Zoe, what about yourself? Is there some programs outside of your own coaching program and that's available in your area in Ireland that's doing much like Nicole and Michelle just talked about to encourage and get some of the young ladies out to play? Is there some things going on there now, or that you know of that maybe hasn't started yet but maybe coming up?
Yeah, Ted, well, actually, I was very fortunate to get chatting to the LPGA girls last year at the PGA show in Orlando. So that was in 2017, January time, and they were actually very keen to get a program started in Ireland. So I'm actually very fortunate that I do currently run an LPGA girls golf in Ireland. Now, it's probably not as big as what the others are. We just set it at one event a month. So I would have anywhere between kind of 15 and 20 girls at that. So it is a start. And as Nicole said, it's as much a social event as it is a golf event. We sort of kicked off last year for St. Patrick's. So it was a St. Patrick's Day themed event. And the girls love it. They all come dressed in green, and they have their little hats on, and so we actually had 1 year on. We had our St. Patrick's one there on Friday the 16th of March. So yeah, the events happen once a month, and it's a golf social event. It's on a Friday night. So yeah, we're slowly but surely catching up. Just little things as we go, but yeah, the girls love it. It's great.
Well, and I think what's and much the same happened here, a few years back in the United States, as some of these programs started to come to fruition, if you will. Until word gets out and some momentum gets building, it is a little bit of a slow start. But I think Zoe and again, I'm sure both Michelle and Nicole would probably back me up that once word gets out there that there are these types of programs available to not just juniors but young girls in particular, which is an area that we want to grow and develop, for a lot of different reasons. I think that in Ireland and other areas as well, you'll start to see a much more rapid growth. I mean, we've seen the development over in areas like Korea and Singapore and other China, with a lot of the young ladies that have come out on in droves on the LPGA tour because of programs that have sort of reached out, if you will, into those areas. So I'm sure you're going to see this happen on a much bigger global scale as more and more nations get into development with the LPGA and other organizations, and PGA of America as well. And also, I'm sure later this year when Susie Whaley, of course, who's going to be the new president of the PGA of America, the first female president that it's ever had, I'm sure we're going to see some great stuff is going to be coming out of that tenure. So we're looking forward to Susie doing some great work. Okay, I want to move on to another great professional joining us from Italy, Anna Diletta. Anna, can you hear me still okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I've got just a few questions for you, and then we're going to kind of go to everybody a little bit. The first question I have for you, Anna, is how popular is children's golf in Italy?
In Italy, golf is not so popular. All know what golf is, but it's also a sport for few people. There are many little golf clubs with 6 or 9 holes where golfers play with a little budget. I don't think that Italian children prefer other sports. The problem is that parents believe that golf is an exclusive sport. My golf school has some 30 children from 6 to 16 years old, and many of these became golfers because have brought by a friend, golfers of course.
Right, well said. So it's something that obviously is starting to grow a little bit in Italy as well. How is it changing in Italy in golf with children ages, say, 2 to 6? Is there changes happening there?
Yes, in Italy, not many golf clubs are open for children to 5 years, but some professional golfers are interested to know this new part of our job. 2 years ago, I was looking for something new about junior coaching, and I found it a good train. The last April, I organized an open day for little children, and it has been a success. More than 20 children played golf with the family, parents, grandparents, and all began a little golf training class. The way of understand the junior golf is changing, and US kids golf has been the key in Italy.
Wow, fantastic. And Nicole, that's got to be a ringing endorsement for your program, the Little Golf Train, to know that it's impacting with such success across the pond, if you will, in Italy. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, very much. And Anna's a superstar over there. She's done just a wonderful job there. We're hoping to one day go over and do a little bit more, but just to see her ideas come through. And I was thinking about what I've learned from Michelle, Zoe, and Anna, and I've picked up so much from them as far as their games and their ideas, and it's just so neat to share that. But to see the kids out there in Italy having a great time. Zoe had a wonderful video with the kids doing a train with pool noodles, which we used. So it's really great to share the ideas. And, I think it's universal that parents want to give their children the best possible abilities. And so to see Anna doing PGA Italy at a big fair and having an area there where the kids could come do fitness and tie it in with golf, that is pretty cool to see Little Golf Train go international and what it can do with that.
Yeah, fantastic. And as I said, what a ringing endorsement for a great program to be able to, in some way just sort of ignite the fire, if you will, in an area like that. And obviously, as I was alluding to earlier in the program, once that message starts to get out there and, between the kids that are participating as well as the parents and grandparents, as Anna just pointed out, word travels fast, and before you know it, you're filling up classroom after classroom, if you will, or classes, shall I say, of more programs. Anna, let me ask you another question about golf. Is it generally accepted there in Italy? How is golf accepted there?
Golf for very little golfers is accepted in few golf clubs. In Italy, all golfers must be registered to the federation, and there you can register only from 6 years old. Under this age, for the Italian Federation, it's not possible to play golf, and most golf clubs respect it. Other clubs, like mine, have a special dedicated insurance for kids.
What about other sports, Anna, in Italy for young children, like football and maybe skiing and other things like that? How is that for children in Italy?
Yes, dance, swimming, basket is also. In Italy, some children do psychomotricity. I think that is a very important activity for them. And I could be interested to organize a class with an expert of this and a golf coach. All this done outdoor is a great opportunity for children.
Very good. Thank you for that, Anna. Michelle, let me ask you, and Zoe, and Anna, of course, you've now decided to become part of this Little Golf Train as a certified conductor. And I'm going to go with Michelle and Zoe, and then we'll finish up with Anna. Michelle, what is it? How does this change the dynamics for what you're doing? What is it? What new opportunities does it offer you as a junior golf coach, if you will, by utilizing the program that Nicole and her partner have developed?
Well, first of all, I have to say I've learned so much from the program, and now one of our biggest programs in our school is actually our Pee Wee program, ages 2 to 6. And so I'm so thankful for Little Golf Train for that. But of course, from Little Golf Train, we learned so much about safety, nutrition, games. But for me, the biggest thing was learning the different stages of child development. I mean, there's a big difference. I don't think I knew this before the program. There's a massive difference between a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. Like a 3-year-old. Right. When you're dealing with a class of 3-year-olds, like a 3-year-old might not be able to understand, what's mine and what's yours, or they might not understand, we've got to take turns, or they may not be able to show empathy towards another 3-year-old that's crying, whereas a 4-year-old or maybe a 5-year-old could do that. So for me, that was the biggest thing, from the program, was just learning so much about the different stages of child development.
Right. And obviously, again, that's extremely important to understand the differences because, again, just because you have students ranging from, let's say 2 to 6 or 3 to 5, obviously there are things that are age appropriate that, you can teach certainly a 5-year-old a little bit differently than you could a 3-year-old, let's say, as you've just pointed out. So there's obviously things that the instructor or coach has to be mindful of to make sure that obviously everybody's having a good time and make sure that, again, that what you're doing is age appropriate, because I'm sure it can be very frustrating not only for the student but for the coaches as well if you're trying to teach to a 3-year-old at a 5-year-old level. It's just not going to happen. Right. Zoe, what about yourself? You've obviously become a certified conductor as well with a little golf train. What I guess possibilities has it opened for you, and where do you see the development of it as time moves on for where you're concerned in Ireland?
Yeah, well, I definitely have to agree with Michelle on what she said. Trying to learn how kids of different ages learn and develop was very important. But I think another thing that I really took from, and still do take from the little golf train, is that on a very first session, I'm sure my first session was like this with the little ones, you don't have to take their hands off the club and position them on correctly, and you're not trying to build a world-class player. They're only 3 or 4. You're just trying to make sure that they have an experience that they're going to enjoy. Like Nicole said earlier as well, they're trying to get the ball in the hole, and if they're down on their knees and they roll it into the hole, they're still trying to get the golf experience. So I guess a lot of the sort of little golf train development for me was if they want to hold it the wrong way around or upside down or with one hand or hit it with the back of the club or the toe of the club, or you really just have to let them discover it, let them try it out, let them get the ball moving forward. Obviously, as a golf coach, you're always trying to show them the right way, and Nicole's a great one for asking, can you do it this way, or can you try it this way? But that's a big thing I've learned from it, as well as the footprints. Putting 2 footprints on a driving range mat or a driving range bay, show them where to stand, and 3 and 4-year-olds can work it out. They know where to put their feet if you're able to show them and somewhere to put them. So the little golf train has done a lot in terms of what way to coach, and maybe not coach as much as you think you should coach at that age, but continually show them and encourage them. And if they do hit it with the toe of the club or the heel of the club or whatever way they like to hit it, always give them praise and encouragement that they've done a great job. That's been a big help from the little golf train.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as the child, as we sort of mentioned earlier, as the child develops and has more of an interest of playing, let's say, in a more competitive environment, and again, age appropriate, then you can start getting into sort of fine tuning and as Michelle touched on earlier, with the rules and the etiquette, to try and explain to a 3-year-old the rules and the etiquette of golf is just not going to go over very well, I'm pretty sure. And I think obviously we have to be mindful of that. But obviously there are going to be some students that maybe show some great adaptation to the sport or the game, and we want to encourage them to continue, especially if as they get older. But again, we have to be mindful. Anna, I want to ask you another question. You mentioned earlier that when you started the little golf train over in Italy, that it was very well received. How are the parents of some of those young golfers in Italy? Are they helpful? Do they tend to be very excited about the experience, or are they sometimes maybe a little bit too helpful?
In my experience, Italian parents are awesome. They want to know, to have their fun, and also me as coach. They are helpful to follow the lesson and to learn.
Right. What kinds of equipment do you like to use when you're working with the kids? What types of things do you like to use? What equipment?
Use equipment, and I love to use kids club. But I love to go to the game shop because there I have the best ideas for my lessons. For example, Lego to put the ball, fit in the right position, plastic animals as targets for putting, and many others. All to have fun. Always fun.
Yeah, that's the number one. Well, thank you for that, Anna. That's a great answer. So, Nicole, I wanted to sort of bring this full circle a little bit, as we wind down here in the last little bit of the show. Obviously, all of our fellow panelists here are certified conductors with the little golf train, and I know you're very proud of the growth and development and hearing some of the stories that they've shared here tonight. But let's talk about the parents' perspective. If they maybe want to introduce their little one to a great program, regardless of where it is, whether it's here in the United States or over with Anna or Zoe or Michelle, what would you say to parents that maybe reach out and say, I've got a little one that sort of falls in that age range? What do you recommend to them, and how do they sort of get started? How do they approach that?
That's a good question. I think looking to see who's in the area on our website, we have a list of some of our certified conductors, and they can see which states they're in or which countries they're in and touch base to see how developed their programs are and if that works out for them. And if there isn't someone in the area, maybe they could approach their coach or pro or the facility and say, hey, would you or somebody at the facility be interested in getting certified? We'd like to put a program together. I think what I found is that sometimes I'll schedule a program, like I did one this spring. It's Saturdays at 1:30, and I found out it's nap time for most of the kids in the facility, so it didn't work out on that time. So, again, you got to kind of keep that in mind, and that's the thing you deal with, We always have one parent there per child in my 2 to 3 year old group because of obviously restroom breaks and diapers and whatnot. So we like to have one parent there to help out the child, and so the parents are also learning while they're there. And I think every parent has their child at the best interest in their heart. And sometimes how it gets expressed may not be for what we see as coaches is best for the child. Like teeing up the shot every time for the child, or taking their hands off and putting it what the adult thinks is right. But, you've got to let that child explore and do it their way, because it's not adult golf yet. It's like trying to put a 3-year-old in a high school classroom. It's got to be child-friendly. So I'm really into, having the adult, here's what we're working on, here's how we're going to say it, where are those thummies? I don't see them quite yet. And, encouraging the parents to let the adult hat go and to encourage the child to do it in their way. They're going to have plenty of time to learn what we learn, but they're not adults yet. So we got to let them be kids and explore and stay safe. So, but see if there's anyone in the area. If not, see if somebody will start the program. I also have flashcards that I've created for ages 2 through 6 that are a lot of fun for golf terms and matching. And I've written a book for ages 3 through 8 called Stick to Sports, Let's Play Golf. So there are some fun ideas in there as well. And I wrote it with the idea of giving parents a way to give the children some ideas and rhymes like 1, 2, show your shoe, or tick-tock, swing the clock. So hopefully some of those ideas will be a good start.
Yeah, and I think it's well said, Nicole. I think it's very important, no matter what level, for those parents that are tuning into the show out there that might be listening and sort of sitting on the fence, well, is this something, is my child ready? Obviously, you're taking a very simplistic approach given the age ranges that we're talking about, and you're trying not to make it too complicated. We're not looking to, necessarily develop the next, top golf professional on any of the tours. You're looking really just to, as you said, teach some life lessons for the students, but also introduce them to a game that may very well be something that they may want to aspire to be a top-level player, or maybe they just want to have fun recreationally with friends or family, or something that, as they develop a little bit more with their grandparents or parents. So there's a lot of different avenues that they can take. You mentioned about nutrition, Nicole, a little bit earlier as well. Is this something that generally that when you put these programs or classes together, is this something that you provide, or work with the parents and they sort of bring whatever little snack or something? Because I'm sure you have to have a break and snack time when you're dealing with youngsters like that. How do you sort of set that up and making sure that you're addressing perhaps specific needs for some children that may have allergies or things like that? How do you work that?
Yeah, I just thought about like 10 things I could talk about, so let me cut it down really short. But, you know,
Okay.
there's so much we can do with nutrition, not just from talking about healthy food, but the emotional connection and how we use food. TRAIN actually is an acronym. The T stands for teaching through play. The R is research-based. The A is age-appropriate. The I is intrinsic rewards, never extrinsic at this age. You know, extrinsic rewards like trophies and medals and things that they get for doing it are not cool at this age. It does not teach what they need. And the N is for nutrition, healthy nutrition. And Dr. Donnelly is really big into the nutrition component. She's very good with a lot of that, and that's part of our program. So we talk about healthy nutrition, but also the fact that you don't use nutrition as reward. You know, in the past, I grew up like, all right, we're going to play for a candy bar or, you know, an ice cream. And that, you know, the kids will learn very quickly that if they do something and get something for it, they won't do it. And Dr. Donnelly's got some great research that I learned a lot, like Michelle and Billy were talking about and Anna at the live workshop, but I learned a lot from her nutrition piece. And she's got so many great stats about the obesity issue that we're dealing with and just the habits, you know, our lifestyles of how we eat now because we're so much on the run. But in our program for 2 to 3s, we'll have some snacks, and I'll have a little tiny, like, you know, those cone cups for water drinking on the course. Those are perfect. And we may put some, you know, goldfish in there or some grapes. We'll give them some options. I think it's important that not everybody likes everything, but they get to try it. The safety of it is important, asking what they're allergic to. You know, we have to be careful of that. Especially small cut-up pieces, not for choking. I always have hand sanitizer there. We do the hand squish, we call it, and clean our hands off, and we're sitting when we're eating and not walking around. And it's a great time to talk about colors. What color of food is blue, and what's a healthy color of food that's green? And, you know, even games like for the older kids, you know, if spaghetti ends in the letter I, what's a food that starts with an I? And then the next person, you know, ice cream ends in an M. What's a food that starts with an M? So you can use those as learning tools. And in our kit, we actually have healthy food flashcards. And I've actually found a cool little game where you can dump out all these healthy foods and reorganize them by grains or proteins or breads or whatever. And that's a great busy activity for the kids to do before. So some places are comfortable doing the food, others are not, but we do after-school snacks and we do holiday snacks too. So it's a great time to talk about what foods fuel energy, and we always do water. We don't do any drinks that have sugar in it, so that's definitely not helpful after school once the kids are out to put sugar in them anymore. So water is always the best, and we always say, you know, 8 ounces of water every 30 minutes for an adult. So for a kid, they don't know that. We say you need at least one or two big fingers worth of water. So giving them a visual because they learn through observation is really key.
Yeah, I agree, and well said, well put together, Nicole. And you're exactly right. You don't want to be hopping them up on sugar. That's going to cut into nap time for sure because they'll be bouncing around the golf course for hours afterwards, and I'm sure most of the parents wouldn't appreciate that. So that's some sound advice for those running those programs. Just in the last few moments here, Nicole, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just touch on very, very briefly how long, when you put together a program like you said you did you know, for the spring, how long does it traditionally run for? Is it sort of a one day at a time, or is it a string of you know, days put together, or what's the typical length of the program or time frame?
Well, I think that's the beauty of the program, and I think the other ladies will attest to, you've got to find what works for you. So in the agenda that we put together, we put together just a one-day event, or a 3-day, or a 5-day, or a 12-day. And you can make that anything you want. If it, you know, works out to 8 or 10 weeks, that's fine. But for the ages 2 to 3 after school, I find a half hour is great. In the summer when it's so hot, a half hour is great. Our 4 to 5s can go an hour, but you need a lot of different activities. They move around. But we also have holiday camps at our place that works out well. So Thanksgiving morning, I've got a 1 hour 2 to 3 year old program, and sometimes we'll have 8 or 10 people there, Thanksgiving morning and coming out to play the day after Christmas or the day before, depending on when it falls on the calendar. Easter Saturday next week, we've got 4 to 5-year-olds coming on Saturday during our 6 to 12-year-old group, and we're working on our 2 to 3s. 4th of July day, we had 18 2 to 3-year-olds show up. So I think it depends on what works for the facility. And I know one of our new conductors, Susan Seiden in North Carolina, is really pumped up. She's got a group that she's starting in April. So it depends on what works for your community. And I always start small and work up. Start with the 4 to 5s, and then you can add a 2 to 3 in, and start with less, do a good job with that, and then you can build with it. But I'm always happy to talk to someone. Give me a shout. We can talk about what works at your facility, and I'm happy to coach you through it.
Perfect. Well said. And very quickly, Nicole, just to let the folks know, if they want to learn, not just for the coaches out there that might be tuning in tonight, if they're interested in maybe learning more about the certification program to become a conductor on the little golf train, but also for parents that might be tuning in that have got a little youngster, maybe age 2 to 6, that they might want to consider, enrolling into some of the different classes and courses wherever they may be. How can they get more information on it? Where do they need to go?
Good question. Definitely check out the website, littlegolftrain.com. When you sign on, there's a train whistle, so don't be alarmed, but that's a good place to go. Check out anybody in the area that's listed under our certified conductors, and we have an email, info@littlegolftrain.com, and that'll come to Patricia and I, and we can kind of help get started there. But, any one of our certified conductors running these programs, especially like Anna and Zoe and Michelle, lucky kids, lucky families. I've learned so much watching them, but reach out there, and that would be a great way to get started.
Perfect. Well, ladies, I want to thank you. I hate to say this, but our hour is up, and you've all done a fantastic job in helping to shed some light on a little different perspective of junior golf. Traditionally, when we think of junior golf, we think of some of the junior golf programs out there wrapped around tournaments and things like that. But the little golf train is obviously something different. It's sort of planting that first seed, if you will. So you ladies have done a fantastic job. And as I'm sure Nicole would attest to, welcome aboard the little golf train. So Nicole, Michelle, Zoe, and Anna, thank you very much for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live's Coach's Corner. You did a fantastic job. Thank you, Anna and Zoe, particularly for calling in overseas. I know it's late or early, as I said, for you, so you can go and get some rest and wind down from your day. And thank you, ladies, for joining me this evening. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Ted. It was awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. You have a great evening. You're very, very welcome. All right. Have a good one. You're welcome, ladies.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. That was my very special guest this evening, Nicole Weller, Michelle Holmes, and, of course, Zoe Allen and Anna Diletta Defon from Italy. Did a fantastic job. Thank you, ladies, as always. It's been a pleasure speaking with you in the Coach's Corner here. And I want to just take a few moments to remind everybody before I move on with the show that we are live every Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Central for those of you under Central Time, and at 7 to 9 for those way out on the East Coast, and 4 to 6 for those of you out in the West Coast in the Pacific Time Zone. That's when you can get the show. Best way to find us is go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, or just simply type Golf Talk Live up in the search key when you get to blogtalkradio.com, and you'll see us there live every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central, as I said. Otherwise, you can just scroll down that page and to our on-demand section, and you'll see all of the previously aired shows, including tonight's will be there later after we go off air in their entirety. So if you missed a show, or you're tuning in partway through tonight's show and you want to hear a little bit what happened on the first hour of the show, you can visit that link in a little bit, and you'll be able to pick up the conversation that you missed. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn.com, those 3 social media platforms. You can also listen to under the podcast section. Again, just type in Golf Talk Live, and you can find us there as well at any time when it's convenient from you. But I want to move on now to my very special guest this evening. His name is Brett Freeman, and he's a 30-year golf teacher professional and the creator of Freebird Golf. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, and I'm going to bring him on the show. Brett, after playing golf in college, found himself working in the golf business. He knew he had always wanted to be a coach or teacher. And after working on the course, one thing led to another, and here he is 30 years later. Brett has many years of teaching and golf mentoring experience under his belt. And he had many inspirations to his, actually had many inspirations to his method of teaching. And Manuel de la Torre, who is a World Golf Teachers Hall of Fame member and also a PGA Golf Professional Hall of Famer, made the biggest impact in his life, who personally mentored Brett for over 30 years. And from then on, his teachings have mirrored Mr. de la Torre's methods, which, of course, is based on the Ernest Jones swing principles, that club movement is more than body movement. And it's these teachings that have set, in his mind, thousands free, if you will. No more paralysis through analysis. So Brett's concepts are designed to make you a good player rather than focusing on memorizing 50 different positions, which we all have can attest to. So let me bring Brett out, and we'll talk a little golf tonight here on Golf Talk Live. Brett, good evening, and welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Ted, good evening. Great to be with you.
Well, thank you very much, sir, for joining me.
You bet.
I wanted to start things off. Yeah, you're welcome. I wanted to start things off a little bit, Brett, if you wouldn't mind. I read a little bit about your background, but just for those that maybe aren't familiar with you and or maybe not in your area, tell the listeners a little bit about specifically why you decided to teach golf. I mean, as I touched on, you want to do coaching and teaching of some kind, but what specifically brought you to the golf game?
Well, I think the main reason was I got in the golf business just like everybody else, and you don't get to play much golf. And
right.
I was more interested in the swing than what kind of shorts you had or whatever. So I was always intrigued with
right.
the golf swing, played golf all my life, and just felt like that was really the bigger direction. I was a head professional at one time, and, I found myself always wanting to be on the lesson tee rather than making sure we had the right inventory. And, Mr. Havenkamp was playing, with so-and-so and all that. So I just had a passion for teaching and was very blessed in my life for the people I've met and been around to be able to do what I love to do. So it's been a great life.
Yeah, and before we get into, because obviously we're going to talk tonight about much of the methodology that Manuel de la Torre talked about and taught for many, many years, and obviously that you've allowed to take root in your teaching. But I want to talk about something that was sort of interesting that I read through a little bit of your bio, and that is, for so many years now, and we'll talk a little bit more detail about it here in just a second, but there has been so many methods and so many gadgets and gimmicks that have been introduced in the golf industry since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, which was 50-odd years ago. And so much has actually done more harm, I think, to the industry than good by creating a lot of frustration and just a lot of confusion. What was it specifically, before we get into his theories, Nat, what specifically did you find with some of the other methods that maybe you originally worked with or were introduced to that you kind of said to yourself, this just isn't going to be what I need to do. I need to find something else. What was sort of a turning point?
Well, I think, the biggest thing to me was just the improvement of players and even my own game. Trying to do all the different positions or find a place and turn your shoulders a certain way. And, every club's a different length, so that means if we're going off a shoulder plane, you've got 13 different shoulder planes you have to work on, which is virtually impossible.
Right.
And all the different things, I had paralysis through analysis, and I played all the other sports growing up, and I felt like I was a pretty good athlete at other things, and golf never progressed like I'd like to. I could do pretty good. My short game was really good. I could chip and putt, all that. But my long game was always suffering, and it was always because with my putting and my chipping, there wasn't so much thought on what was moving it as far as just moving the club. And it really, something really triggered with me when I was in college. I was a college golfer, so I wasn't awful, but I wasn't as good. You're never as good as you want to be. We all know that. But I'm in a kinesiology class, which is study of muscles in motion, and the professor says at least 100 times, your big muscles never, ever initiate motion. They always respond to motion. So I'm a golfer, and all my life I'm taught, well, you turn your shoulders at 90 degrees, your hips are at 45, got more weight on your right than the left. You you open your left hip, you fire as hard as you can, get the right elbow as close to the side, and then hang on. I mean, that was kind of the method. And we look today, and we've got more injuries on the PGA Tour than we do in the NFL. And it's because of all these things and the way they're trying to contort the body. Just it isn't designed to do that. In golf, we should be able to, at the highest level, I mean, go ahead.
No, please, go ahead.
No. Well, I look at Tiger right now, and some of the things he said, he's trying to use his arms more, he swings the club freer. Well, his swing speed's greater than it's ever been. So obviously the things that he did before was injuring him, and he's doing things now that won't injure him, yet he's swinging the club faster than he swung it before. So, I mean,
it's interesting
that Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Interesting. Go ahead.
What I was going to say
is
Ted. Just to add, just to add to what you were going to say is, you're exactly right. When I think back, 30 or so years ago, when I look at the golf professionals, and I'm talking about, of course, on tour, the Nicklauses and the Palmers and the Trevinos and Johnny Miller and things like that. We had so many different swing styles. Johnny Miller is one that comes to mind, particularly because he had that big reverse C, which was very common in that time frame. But now, fast forward, 30, 40 years, and his back, isn't as strong, and he's had knee issues and things like that. So, we know golf traditionally puts a lot of stress on the body, but if you're making movements at that speed, especially with the speeds of today's golfer, it's even more so than I think during those times. But you're exactly right. I think a lot of people misunderstand, and they've been and I hate to sort of go against my fellow professionals out there, but I think one of the criticisms that I have is a lot of misinformation or information that isn't maybe isn't explained fully. It's not necessarily that it's wrong, but because it's not explained fully, the average student doesn't understand and can't pick it up. And as you said, they get out there and they're trying to analyze all of the information the coach has just told them, and they fall into that paralysis category. So didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to get that out there. Go ahead and if you had a further thought on what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely the truth. And, even the players you mentioned, I mean, 30, 40 years ago, everybody looked different because we didn't have video. And now everybody's trying to look exactly the same and put their bodies in the same places. And so, Manuel used to always say a great player can do just about anything and still hit the ball. And that's just something that they have.
Right.
One of my very best friends is a guy named Greg Ladioff. He played at Ohio State, and he was on tour for about 10 to 12 years. And he said, everybody on tour is trying to get back to where they were when they were 15. Because they didn't think about it. They just went out and played golf. And he said, nobody plays as good on tour as they did then, really. He said, we're just trying to, we manage our game better, but the ball striking is not any better. Well, there's something to that in the fact that when you're a kid, you just go out and play and there's no fear. You're not thinking about positions. You're not thinking about all these other things.
Right.
And so it frees everybody up. Well, everybody looks different when they do that. You and I both walk. One foot goes in front of the other. The motor skill is the same, but we don't look the same doing it. And so trying to take
exactly.
One of the things that aggravates me is, somebody in our profession puts a screen up and here's Davis Love, and then they put you up and say, okay, now here's you. Well, that's apples to oranges. We're not the same. And that doesn't mean that you can't swing the club or you can't play good or you can't hit great shots. But if you've ever met Davis Love, I mean, his arms are extremely long, so his hands are high. Well, I'm not built that way, so my hands aren't going to go that high. I mean, all these different things that we try to get people to do that really is counterproductive for them playing good golf. And the game should be enjoyed and not struggled with as much as it is. It's a disaster.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly, Brett. I think one of the things, and just to add a little bit further on that, is you're exactly right. I think a lot of the comparison, even though I think the intention was right, I just think it was misguided. One of the things that I used to see as well is that sort of comparison with the pros and say, okay, well, here's Nick Faldo. He's 6 foot, 4 or 5, whatever. And here you are, you're 6 foot 4 or 5, kind of similar build, try to emulate Nick Faldo's swing. Well, your swing might end up actually being more like Jim Furyk. as opposed to Nick Faldo or maybe a Freddie Couples, or depending on your body style and body type. And I think the mistake that the industry has made for many, many years is to sort of pigeonhole everybody into the same category. And what's happened is, again, I'm 6'4". I'm about 200 and, well, I won't give it out completely, but 200 plus pounds, and still growing. But I can certainly emulate many of the moves that a Nick Faldo would do, as an example, or even a Johnny Miller. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best swing for me. I have to find how my body works and reacts to certain circumstances. And again, I think this has been a problem with the industry for a long time. So fast forward a little bit, Brett, and let's talk about, because you've had the opportunity to learn from some of the best out there, and somebody that caught your eye was Manuel de la Torre. So let's talk about him. First off, talk about the man that you knew, and then a little bit about what his theory was on what should be done to be a better golfer.
Well, in my opinion, I mean, there's nobody knew the golf swing like Manuel. And, one of the great things about a genius is they can take something that seems very complicated and break it down and make it seem very simple. And that's exactly what he did. He could you could throw him. I know shortly before he passed away a couple of years ago, some of us were talking to him, and somebody come out with a D-plane, and he did it with straws. He was sitting there. I mean, his mind was incredible, and he's like, there's no such thing as a D-plane. And he just destroyed it. I mean, went through the whole thing. It was amazing. But he could take anybody from Masters champion Tommy Aaron, I've seen him work with him, to a kid that's never touched a golf club before, and virtually get that kid to swing the golf club and look like he'd been playing golf for forever. It was amazing. As good of instructor as he was even that much greater of a man. Some of the guys that we were with him a lot. We would all say the same thing. At least we recognized when you were around him, you were around greatness. He was the most humble, unassuming man. But he was, you knew. I mean, there was an air about him, and can't say enough great things. But his teaching changed my life because, number one, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. You want to see the result. And the way people improved and the way they play the game and the artistry to the game, which I feel like we've lost a lot of, was there. And you can see somebody that's, only played maybe a couple of years and, they're a 4 or 5 handicap. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, but it certainly happens. And I don't think it ever happened. I couldn't get anybody there trying to put them in positions. But the golf swing and his method was basically this. The golf swing is a direction of motion, not a position. It's a backwards and forwards motion. So he would go through that, and what's backwards and forwards for you? Well, it's a swing plane. We know that, but his swing plane was based on pure geometry. And if you saw it, and it was not the golf machine at P1 or 2 or 3, it was a direction of motion. So he would show you that, and he would never talk about how your body would respond to that. He would just talk about you do it. In other words, there was a position to it. You respond to it, but he would never talk about where your shoulders went, your knees went, where your elbows, none of that. And so immediately you could see somebody that he taught and say, that looks like a Louis Oosthuizen. That looks like Freddie. I mean, because they had that motion.
Right.
He would work real hard on
but that was natural to
the club.
Right.
Yeah,
but that was
everybody's
because that was natural. Right, to their particular body type or body style or body motion, that was natural for that individual, and that's important. And that brings me to another point. I sort of referenced a few moments ago about sort of pigeonholing everybody into one sort of swing theory and method, and everybody's got to get into slot A and position B and so on and so forth. Right. And I think one of the bad things that has done over time to the golf industry in general is it's created such a level of frustration. And I think, without even getting into all his methodology, the proof in the pudding is the fact that handicaps have barely budged an inch in the last 25 years or longer.
And we've got better equipment, better golf courses, everything. Yeah.
Right.
The golf ball doesn't curve like it used to.
And it's not through the gallant effort. Right. And it's not through efforts of some – I mean, there are a ton of great golf professionals and teaching professionals out there, but I think what's happened is the industry has been led and sort of deterred, if you will, and I'm not trying to throw all blame there, but through everybody from the equipment manufacturers to the golf ball manufacturers have sort of guided everybody in a direction. In order to hit the ball further, you got to do this and you got to do that,
right.
And everybody sort of followed suit. And the truth of the matter is, if you talk to most students, Brett, most of the time what they'll say is, I just want to be able to play better. I want to get out there and have fun. And, yeah, I want to hit a little bit further. But they're not looking to be the next great golf pro out on tour. They just want to be able to go out and have fun. And the problem is, this is why so many of them are getting out of the game, is because they're tired and they're frustrated in buying into a lot of this information. So let's talk a little bit more about Manuel and about their a couple of important ideas, if you will, that are part of Manuel's golf teaching system, and I'm going to read them out here, and then I want to get your thoughts in response to them.
Okay.
Everything we teach should be based on fundamental principles of physics and geometry that can be proven.
Correct.
And anything we ask student to do cannot be overdone. Can you explain that and talk a little bit?
Yeah. Anytime, a lot of times if you have somebody that, and this has always been an irritant of mine, mainly because I got it from Manuel, you'll hear an instructor say, go a little more here, go a little more inside. Well, what's a little more inside? It's going to be different tomorrow than it was today. And so there has to be an absolute, this is where I want you to move the club. And if you do this, because the great thing about golf is the golf ball is no respecter of persons. It could care less if you've been playing 20 minutes or 20 years. It only responds to what you do with that golf club. It doesn't care what your knees do, your shoulders do, nothing. It just cares about what you do with the club. So over and over and over, we work on two things, the geometrical principle and the physics law. And the physics law says if you're going to move an object, say a golf ball, with another object, say a golf club, that object, the golf club, has to be going the same direction as your destination, which is the target. And so we pretty much start everybody right there. Your responsibility is not to get this ball in the air. Your responsibility is to move this club in the direction of your target. Well, the direction of the target is always on the ground. It's never in the air. It's always on the ground.
Yep.
And the loft of the club sends the ball in the air. As soon as you do that, and as soon as they understand that, I don't want to go into a physics law with them, but that's basically what it is. And it's a sound principle. If they move the club this way, the ball goes immediately. I had one today, a lady today that I've never gotten the ball in the air. I've had 10 lessons, and she's been everywhere. So I grabbed the club, moved through this, just like you're putting. 10 minutes later, she said, I didn't know we could have this much fun at it. Yeah, it's fun. Because the ball, all she wanted was the ball to go in the air. Well, I'm not going to go through and explain physics, but that's what that is. Now, the other statement that you can never give a student something that could be overdone, I'm not going to work on opposites. If they do one thing, I want you to try to do the opposite of that. So I always use this example as well. One of my really good friends, I won't mention his name, he teaches in Kansas City. We're in each other's weddings. I love him. He's a great guy. But he says, if I have somebody coming over the top, I just make them swing to right field. I said, well, what do you do when they start hitting to right field? Tell them to swing back to left field? I mean, see, you've overdone something. And so as long as we teach them, look, I want you to move this club in this direction, in the direction of the target, whatever you're telling them, if they keep doing that, they get better. They don't get into a rut of chasing this, coming over the top. Now I'm swinging inside out. Now none of that goes away because now we've got a specific thing that we're after. And if they do that, that ball has to go to the target. So that's what he basically, in a nutshell, what he meant by don't give them anything that they can overdo.
Yeah, and another example that I know that and another example that he would use, and I think this is a very common one that we see, unfortunately, in the golf industry, or certainly have in the past, and that is, obviously we have a lot of slicers out there. I mean, that's just part of the game. But for a long time, what a lot of instructors would do would try to teach them how to hook the ball, and a lot of times what would happen is just like what you talked about a moment ago is, now the person's got, he's not slicing the ball anymore, but now he's hooking it, a little bit too much, right? And overcompensation. And a lot of times then they get into a new problem. So now you've got to unpack and unwind that problem. So I guess really what you're trying to say is what Manuel was trying to do was teach the right way from the beginning,
yes.
and not continually have overcorrection every time somebody, because again, it changes day to day. So if they're slicing
right.
today and you've got them hooking, now they're hooking tomorrow. So what do we do to unwind that? And I think that's
right.
generally what he was trying to say, correct?
Yes, and so, now then they lose confidence in you as an instructor because, well, yeah, I'm not slicing it anymore, but look at this. And I tell you not to do what you were
right.
doing, now don't do that, do this. So one of the first things to do with the slicer, though, is come in and explain to them, okay, this is why you slice. This is why the ball goes
yep.
to the right. And before I ever see him hit a shot, and this is what he would do. And then we would go back and explain to him, okay, we don't want to work on what's wrong. We want to work on what's right. So we're not trying not to do anything.
Right.
We're trying to do something. But what happens a lot of times with the slicers, they start and the ball maybe go pretty straight and they go to the right, and then they start trying to, aim right, swing back left, and then it gets worse. And so they don't understand why the ball's going where it's going. They think they're doing things.
Right.
They read the magazines. They watch the Golf Channel. They think they're doing things to make the ball go straight. And you're like, no. For instance, take the club straight back. Well, if you take the club straight back, guess what? You're probably going to slice it because that's not a geometrical
yep.
principle. It's not a circle. So explaining that right there a lot of times kind of puts them in a different mindset. Okay, that's what you used to do. Here's what we're going to do. And be very big. The biggest part, with Manuel's teaching was so much mental. Why would you think about what not to do? And I use this all the time. I've been
right.
teaching this my 32nd season. I have never had anybody hit a good shot and turn around and look at me and say, what did I just do? But they all ask
right.
me what they did when they hit it bad. And so
of course.
Daniel's dad, Angel, said it. Manuel said it. I say it. Well, why do you want to know that? You want to do it again? I don't want the bad thought. I want the positive thought. And so if you teach them something that they can overdo, then they get negative corrective.
Yep. You're exactly right. And I think, too, that, and just going back to what I was saying a little bit earlier about some of the different golfing styles that we used to see in decades past, when you look at somebody like a Lee Trevino, and he's probably the most obvious, I think, for most golfers to relate to. I mean,
mm-hmm.
He had a very unorthodox swing. Freddie Couples was another one. I mean, as beautiful
right.
looking as Freddie's swing could be to some people, it was very unorthodox by today's standards. When you
mm-hmm.
compare him to, say, let's say an Ernie Els or a Rory McIlroy or somebody like that. But they all had certain things in common, and it didn't matter how they arrived there because, again, they were all different. And going back to the point I made a moment ago is that I think that what the industry has tried to do was, I won't say marginalize, but has tried to sort of pigeonhole people into one box, sort of a one-size-fits-all
right.
golf swing, and you just can't do that. So sort of an interesting statement, and I want to read this to you, and then I want you to sort of explain a little bit about it. He talks about restricting sort of the backswing size by reducing the body's response. Explain a little bit about
mm-hmm.
that.
Well, whenever the body doesn't respond correctly, you can only take it so far. In other words, if I don't let my lower body move at all, my club will only go maybe, if I'm lucky, 3/4 of the way back. And so there's a lot of things like right now, a lot of instructors have people keep the right knee flexed. Well, you keep the right knee in that same flex as it starts at address, and your golf swing gets short. It just has to, because you've restricted the body from its natural motion. None of us stand straight-legged, so you have a little bit of bend in your knees. Well, if I turn to walk, that leg straightens. I mean, it doesn't lock, but it straightens. So when you allow the body to do what it naturally does, it will go where it needs to go. When you restrict the body motion, then you're going to restrict the size of the golf swing. So we would try to get people not to do that, not to restrict the body, let the body go where it normally goes. The motion of the golf club makes you go perfect every time for you.
Right.
So
exactly.
A lot of times
well
people
said.
say, well, your shoulders don't turn or his shoulders don't turn as much. That's the way he's made. I can't change. That's the way God put him together. I can't make him do something that his body's not capable of doing. But, you know, I gave a lesson yesterday, a guy's 87 years old. He's not quite parallel, but he's pretty close, and he's very limber for that age. And he still hits his driver about 180 yards. Well, that's pretty good for 87. But that's just because he allows the body to respond to the motion of the club.
Right. I would take that any day if I was 87 too. So that's a great
Absolutely.
analogy.
I'm just hoping I can be there with him when I'm that age.
Yeah, so, exactly. Brett, let me ask you this. Yeah, let me ask you a quick question here just before we continue on, because this is something that I think has changed a little bit. You know, when you look at some of the older video and footage of many of the great golfers, Nicklaus obviously comes to mind, but a lot of them, and again, I know it changes for everybody, but do you think that, and let me just explain a little bit and then I'll get you to respond. One of the things that I've noticed in some of these new golf swings, if you will, as an example, when Nicklaus, especially with his driver, when he would turn back in his backswing, his left foot would come a little ways off the ground. And one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of modern golf instruction is they're trying to keep that left foot planted quite firmly on the ground and really not allow it to come up a little bit to work with that natural body motion. Do you think by sort of forcing a lot of golfers to do that, and again, it might work for somebody, but again, sort of pigeonholing everybody into that category, not only has it caused a lot of injuries, I'm sure, but that has also, I think, helped to impede a little bit. Do you agree with that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's one of the most dangerous things we have is to tell people what they're doing with their feet. Your footwork, well, I think it's important, is a symptom of either you're doing it correctly or incorrectly. And whether the heel comes up or doesn't come up absolutely has nothing to do with your swing. You know, everybody says if I swing the club in a circle, you know, my body rotates around my axis, which it should, which is my spine. I'm not trying to do that. That's just the way it works. You do it in everything else in life. I throw a ball, if I rake leaves, it happens all the same. But by trying to keep that there, now I'm focused on something I shouldn't. But some people, it comes up. I know Manuel, everybody had asked him about that, and he said, well, until I hit 45 years old, it never came off the ground, but I never thought about it. And now it comes off the ground, you know, when he got older.
Right.
So everybody's different, but if you're trying to do that and your body doesn't work that way, I think that's going to shorten the swing. Besides that, it's going to put a lot of pressure on your back. It's going to do a lot of things it shouldn't do.
Yeah, you're right. And I think what happened, you know, some years ago when he started coming out with programs like the X Factor, you know, there was a lot of that discussion around the tour and in the teaching industry. You know, there was a lot of talk about keeping that left foot planted in order to help create more torque and, of course, ultimately more power. And again, I think, you know, for some, you know, younger and more limber golfers, that might be something that, again, depending on the individual, might be something that they can get away with. But if your foot naturally needs to come off as a result or response to the swing, then you need to let that happen. And I think forcing something to not happen is sort of setting yourself up for failure. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. 100%. That's why, you know, trying to keep it there, if it doesn't go there, again, you're thinking about something that doesn't even need to be thought about, and it's going to go where it's supposed to naturally.
Right,
so,
right, exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
You know, one of the other things, too, which was kind of interesting, reading and sort of preparing for tonight's show is, you know, he talks about the short game and sort of getting, again, it goes back to what you said about that mental image of, you know, if the shot is too high, as an example, that there's a sort of a cause and effect. Talk a little bit about how, you know, what his idea for the short game, what he envisioned, and what people should be really thinking about. You know, there's a lot of talk about what they should be focusing on and the correct technique and things like that. And I know it goes to the overall picture of individuality, but at the same time, were there certain things that Manuel spoke about the short game, and if so, what were they?
Well, the biggest thing was it's the same as really the short game is just a shorter swing of, you know, I mean, that's all it is. So we're not changing anything from the short game to, say, the driver, except for the size of the swing. But mentally, we went through continually that the golf club is always going to the target. So the lifting of the club, or lifting of the ball, I should say, is where everybody has trouble. That's why they scoop it. That's why they hit behind it. That's why they do all this other stuff. So he would set somebody, now you've got a lot of people put all their weight on their left side when they're going to chip, and they play the ball back. And so that wasn't allowed. You just set up like you're going to hit the ball as far as you can. And if you want your feet closer together and you want to grip down on the club, you can. But you're going to move the club in the same arc with a little bitty swing. And so once they see how the ball comes off and responds to the club going forward, but mentally, he would say over and over and over, mentally, every swing, every short, especially the short game, is going on the ground, not in the air. The ball sends the club in the air, or the club sends the ball in the air, not you. And that takes care of the scoop or the, again, the chili dip and all that other stuff. Putting the weight, though, to the left side and playing the ball back, now you've got a completely different action than what you had before. And if I've got a wedge shot and I've got the wedge and I want to, on the side of the green, sand wedge, whatever, and so it's going to be a high, soft shot, well, I pick the club that does that. Well, when I play it back in my stance, I take loft off the club. So that's the last thing I want to do, and I think I see that a lot as well. But the other thing that really he was very, very different in was he would hand, say, a player a golf ball and would be standing by the green, and he would say, I want you to get that ball, as close to that target as you can, and they'd roll it up there. And he would say, okay, did you pick a place to land the ball, or did you think about where the ball was going to stop? And they'd always say, where it's going to stop. So in your short game, why do you think about where you're going to land it? And then he would take it to other sports. If you're playing basketball and you're going to do a bounce pass, would you think about where you're going to bounce the ball on the floor, or would you think about where it's going to end up? Well, where it's going to end up. Then why are you always trying to land the ball at a place? Why don't you see the ball stop at the target? So one of the greatest, probably one of the greatest shots I've ever seen in my life was 92 or 3 at Moon Valley Country Club. He was putting on, we were there at a teaching seminar, a lot of tour players there. Ted Purdy was there. I think Trip Eisenhower, some of those guys. Trip Eisenhower I don't think was a big fan, but he was friends with all those guys, so they were there. And so Manuel was off the side of his putting green, and he was saying, what would you hit? And the pin was maybe 3 paces off the side of the green, or off from the edge. Well, I'd use a wedge this way. And he goes, why do you guys always think so high? So they, the grass was real thick around the green. He said, well, you got to get over the grass. He said, well, what would you use? He said, I'd use a 2-iron. And he hit this 2-iron that screamed into this grass and then just rolled out just as easy, kind of about 2 inches from it. He kind of swelled his chest back up and said, that's how I'd hit the shot. It was great. So he had a fantastic imagination, a great short game, but it was all done the same from the driver through the sand wedge. It's just smaller. And so he would say, you can practice your short game for 45 minutes and go to the golf course, and you've never made a full swing, and on the first tee you make the same swing you did with that wedge, just bigger, and it's going to go just like it's supposed to. So his short game stuff was miraculous as far as how good he was and how good the players, that he had could get. But it wasn't any different than the full swing. But the visualization of the ball going low has always been a big part, because then the club lifts the ball. And that's where everybody messes up in their short game, is trying to lift it.
Right. I was laughing because your story kind of reminded me a little bit of another well-known golfer, and that was Chichi Rodriguez. When you watched earlier days of Chichi, he had all kinds of interesting shots in the bag, but one that he was very, very famous, and I remember watching him play for many, many years, and he was definitely a low ball hitter. And I was chuckling because I don't recall the tournament, but it was quite some time ago. But he hit sort of a low screaming hook into this green, and the announcers were just sort of kind of going crazy, like this thing's gone. And it just checked up, within a couple of feet of the hole. But he must have bent that thing probably about 30 yards, and I don't think it ever got above 5-6 feet off the air or off the ground. And But he again had control, and he knew what he was doing, and he executed the shot the way he knew he was able to do it. And I think the point really that you're trying to make, and I agree with you, is I think that golf is an individual sport in so many ways. It's not just something that we can play by ourselves, but it's individual to you and I, and we have to find, based on certain principal fundamentals, what works for me and what works for you and all the millions of golfers around the world. And I think once people understand that, and that doesn't mean that they can't try some other things out there by all means, but I think they have to stop and think a little bit, because, again, one of the things that adds, Brett, to the frustration with so many golfers is, and again, I'm not going to name names, but, so-and-so comes out with this plan, or so-and-so comes out with that plan. So, they're out there and they're buying the DVDs and the videos and so forth, and they're trying all this stuff, and they're not seeing really a lot of improvement. They might see some in the beginning, but it's sort of reinventing the wheel each time. And then when that doesn't pan out after, 2 months of trying or a month of trying, now they're buying the next latest and greatest thing, or the next driver that's coming out guaranteeing them an extra 20, 30 yards, which we know as professionals is a lot of malarkey, because if they don't know how to put the club face on the ball with any sort of consistency, they're not going to get 20 or 30 yards. They're going to be lucky if they get 10 extra yards. So, I mean, we have to get real, I think, in this industry, and I'm not afraid to call them out. I don't believe in bad-mouthing anyone specific, but I think that we have to, as professionals in the industry, I think we have to be honest with ourselves and say, look, we're here to help the average students out there. We're here to help them enjoy and have fun. But if we're not going to be forthcoming with accurate information, and we're just sort of pushing the latest and greatest thing, that we're doing the service and the industry an injustice. And I think that's really what Manuel was trying to do with his system. He was saying, look, we're all different. There's certain fundamental truths that have to be followed. But if your swing looks a little this way or looks a little that way, as long as you meet the physics and the geometry that's required, you're going to be okay. And I think that's generally what he was trying to say. Am I right or wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. And in that, you may not – the geometry, as soon as you start using words like geometry and physics, people go, but it's so simple.
Yeah.
I remember him talking about sitting there with his dad and Ernest Jones. He said, I'm 7 years old in our living room, and they're dissecting the golf swing. And he said, the beautiful thing about it was I understood everything they're talking about. And now, if you don't know what the axis of the golf ball is, and the D plane and the angle to you don't even know what then you don't know anything. And you're trying to make it as simple as you can. And so, again, how your body does it will be unique to you. There's certain things the club has to do, or the ball can't go in the direction of the target. So working on that, sometimes, using certain words, people get a little lost, like, oh, man, this is going to be really hard. And it's not. It's so simple. The game's incredibly hard. But to send a ball in the direction of a target is not. But it's one of the easiest or most simplest things that we have in sport. The game is hard because it's so mental. And the game is hard because, if you line up wrong and you hit a perfect shot, well, you miss the green. You use the wrong club, it goes too far. You use the wrong club, it buries in a bunker short. There's a million different things. The ball can bounce funny. I've hit the flagstick before and wound up in the water. Like, I can't say I hit the wrong shot. I mean, everything was where it's supposed to, but my score wasn't very good. Well, that's the game. So the game, a lot of times, really wrecks us because we think about the score so much, instead of what am I doing with it?
Right.
And, his big deal was our fingerprints are all different, so we're all going to look different swinging a golf club. But again, every student he had, there was a similarity to everybody that he had that stayed with his concepts. They all have a free, wonderful-looking motion. I mean, they don't look the same in how their body does it, but how they move is very graceful. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. If you're an instructor and everybody's, nobody looks the same, it's not cookie cutter, but they all have this same action. They look like there's no effort to this. Like there's just something, it's just easy. Well, that in itself says a lot for the concept and how it works. And everybody has a different skill level. So the fact that they're not a 2 handicap, but yet they're sending it down the middle, and having a good time playing golf. And you said something earlier that Manuel would talk about a lot. He said, 40 years ago, he said, I didn't have anybody that had a distance problem. But they only had 2 things that they cared about. Do I look good when I swing? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to look for my golf ball. And he said now they don't care what they look like when they swing or if they lose the ball. They just want it to go far. And so in his book, he said if he could remove the word power from everybody's vocabulary, they would not believe how good they could play. And there's a lot of truth to that.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, Brett. You know, and this is sort of what I was alluding to earlier about the manufacturers. You know, they, you know, a player like a John Daly comes by who hits it a mile, and that is something that worked for him. And everybody's, you know, out buying the you know, the next and greatest Big Bertha, you know, driver by Callaway, because that's what he was playing on that particular, you know, Sunday afternoon. So that was the equipment he was using at the time. Then he switched to someone else. And the truth of the matter is, you know, if you're trying to emulate a John Daly swing as an example, or you're thinking that by buying a certain piece of equipment in order to gain more yards, but you're not really understanding how your body needs to work. I mean, I've seen people, Brett, that have taken, I'm sure you've had this example as well. I know people that can take old persimmon woods and belt the thing 250 yards straight down the middle. And I've seen other people that can have the best driver on market today, the best shaft in there, that can't hit it, 150 yards straight. So the equipment has nothing to do with it to the extent that people are making it. And I didn't mean to cut your thought off there, but it was something I wanted to mention as well in lieu of what you were talking about. But I agree wholeheartedly with you. I think that there's a lot of room. It needs to be a lot of room for discussion as an industry in whole. And I think that what you're talking about here tonight on the show about Manuel's, thoughts about the game and how he perceived it, I think are spot on. And I think there's a lot of people out there that understand that. But I think there's also a lot of people that have gotten caught up in the trap of things. And that brings me sort of to another quick thought that I want to ask you about. Based on your work with Manuel, you've known him for years, and that, and I believe there's a place for everything, but I get a little concerned sometime with the run on technology that's out there today. That again, this is something else that is confusing a lot of. I mean, it might be a help, and I'm sure you might use some technology perhaps to the golf instructor. But I think there was a line that got crossed where too many students were being bombarded with stats and figures and all this kind of stuff to add to the confusion. What do you think Manuel's thoughts would be when, as far as technology is concerned? That's
well, I already know what they are. I mean, he used to say, and I'm sure this made a lot of people upset, but he used to say videos for a teacher who can't teach.
Right.
Because if you have to slow it down to
Interesting.
understand what's happening, then you don't know what's happening with the golf swing. And he was very big, on teaching us, like, where do you stand? We never, very, very seldom will I ever stand. So I'm facing you, and I will never stand directly, but maybe once in a while, directly behind you. He would stand at a 45-degree angle. So he said you can see both the front and the back, which is very true. At the same time, if you watched him teach, he never watched the body. His eyes and his head would move with the golf club. And he would say it's just like a train. If you're too close, if you can't see it, back up. So there may be times where I'm working with a student and I may be 20 feet away and I can see the motion better than if I was close. I use a little bit of some different things for different players. And as he got, older, I think he said, well, there's some benefit to some things, but you got a guy that's shooting 95 and he knows his TrackMan numbers. I mean, so what? I mean, we've taken the artistry kind of out of the teaching. I go to the desert some and teach in the winter, and some of the guys there, a lot of the people that I work with, they'll say, well, I went to the teaching center for a lesson, and they put me on a TrackMan, and he said, well, your numbers are this. He said, but they don't know how to get the numbers to change. So they'll work on this concept and go back and get on the TrackMan and say, hey, my numbers changed, but they're not trying to change the number. And so some of the things you see, I mean, I watch everything that's out there. Manuel was very big on look at every concept that's out there. Look at everything that's out there. If there's a better way to do it, do it. I mean, he was married to what he did, but he was always looking. He went to almost every coaching, teaching summit that the PGA had. and taking notes. And he said I'd come back and go on the lesson tee by myself, and try different things on myself to see if there was any validity to it. And so far, I mean, before he passed away, he hadn't found anything. So my point in that, though, is all the technology in the world is not going to help that guy that's shooting 95, and probably going to take him from 95 to 105, because now he's got all this stuff in his mind.
Right, and that goes to what I said earlier about the handicaps not changing. You know, despite all this technology and advancement, we're still in the same boat with a lot of the players out there, and this has added to such a level of frustration for a lot of golfers that people that I know that have played for 20, 30 years, they're not quitting because they're older and their body's aching. They're not playing anymore because they're frustrated. They're not improving. It's getting worse, and not because of age-related issues or body restrictions, but because they're tired of you know, trying all these different things that are not really getting to the root causes of things. Brett, I want to go. Yeah, I want to go and talk just for a few moments before we. It's hard to believe, but this hour is almost over, and we're kind of just getting warmed up. But you've obviously got a new website, freebirdgolf.com. And you're going to be obviously talking about a lot of things that Manuel De La Torre and you and he worked on this site. Tell us a little bit about the site and what's going to be available.
Well, we started the site. Chris Doster and I started that. The main reason we started it was just to help golfers. You know, our whole deal, our mission is to make golf more enjoyable, so that people have fun at it again. And it should be enjoyed, and it should be a good time. So we have two different things we offer. You can sign up. It's free. There's 30 videos on there, and it's pretty self-explanatory from there. Then we'll have a membership that'll be $10 a month. We'll send out either a podcast or a different video over different subjects a couple times a month. And then we'll take certain individuals, do like a lottery, and we'll give them a lesson online. So I guess I'll have to use video.
Okay, wow.
Video for that, but no, I'm just joking because of what I said earlier. But it's just set up really to, it's too bad that our industry, the very first time they ever gave the Teacher of the Year, the PGA did, they gave it to Manuel in 1986.
Wow.
He was the very first one.
Wow.
He was highly respected, but again, because of his personality, which was fantastic. He wasn't a self-promoter. He said about one instructor said, "Hey, I had several guys go to number one in the world, and they all left me." And Manuel's response was always, "I never saw him hit a shot." So just because we're giving the information, I mean, it's the player that did it. But he was very unassuming that way, or you'd hear a lot more. And so really, we're wanting to help people and enjoy the game. I believe that this is the greatest concept in golf. If it wasn't, I'd teach something else. But for 32 years, it's proven out to be very, very strong, and people improve really, really rapidly and then enjoy the game. And the greatest thing they have about this concept is, if they put it down for the winter and they come back, they always say, I come back so much faster. I mean, it doesn't take weeks and weeks of practice. It's just a couple of times, and there it is again. Because your swing, once you develop that swing, it never goes away. And so we started the freebirdgolf.com deal just in lieu of that, really to get the word out more about this concept and how it can help golfers.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I mean, obviously there's a lot of information that's floating around the web, and some of it certainly is good, but a lot of it isn't. And I think it's important, again, those of us in the golf industry, that we make good use of that. It's a very valuable resource, there's no doubt. And I understand, jokingly what, you were talking about a few moments ago about, video and things like that. I've certainly used video. I'm not going to lie and say I don't. But I don't. It's not that I don't buy into it, but I don't rely on technology when I'm working with somebody. I work primarily a lot with corporate clients and that, but they'll come and ask me and say, about TrackMan or something else, and I'll, basically give them the same answer that you did, is, as far as the numbers. But the thing is that, I want them to have a good experience when they come to take a lesson. I want them to go away not thinking about positions so much, but about playing the game itself and enjoying and having fun. That's what I want them to take away with it. And I want them to certainly work on some things, but I don't want it to be so regimented that, again, they've got to fold their arm this way or they've got to do that, because the body needs to move naturally, I believe as well. And I think that's how we were designed. And I think if you try to change that, then you're only kind of going against what human nature has given and designed the way your body works. And everybody is different because we are uniquely different. Brett, as we just sort of wrap up here, we literally only have a few minutes left, but I want to give you an opportunity for those that are listening that maybe want to reach out to you. What's the best way to do that if they're maybe going to be in your area, through the summer as we're getting ready to get into full swing of golf season here in a little bit of time for some anyways in the Northeast and other parts of the country. Where can they reach you, and what's the best way to get in touch, and we'll go from there.
The best way to get a hold of me is going to be through Forest Ridge Golf Club in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, where you can email freebirdgolf.com.
Oh, okay.
You can just send a message to that, and there's a place on there that says contact. You can go there, hit that. You can send an email right there, and I'll get that, and then we can hook up. So if they're going to be in the area and they want to take a lesson, that'd be great. They can contact me right there.
Perfect. And obviously, if they want to learn more about freebirdgolf.com, they can go there and learn a little bit more about the digital club that you and Chris. Of course, Chris was on last week's show and talked a little bit about it, but he wanted to save a little bit for you bit for you this week when you came on. So, well, Brett, I want to thank you very much for coming on tonight at Golf Talk Live. It's been a very interesting conversation. I've enjoyed it, and I'm all about with the show is my purpose for doing this is to not only help the folks out there become better players, but also my fellow golf professionals. I think it's great to exchange ideas and to hear some other points of view. And that's what I try to do here on Golf Talk Live. And I want to thank you for not only sharing your thoughts and ideas, but letting us get a little bit better look into the life of a true professional, Manuel de la Torre. So thank you for sharing that tonight on Golf Talk Live. You
bet, Ted. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right. Not a problem. I look forward, and I hope you'll come back and join me again, and we'll maybe continue and get into some other discussions as well. But thanks for joining me tonight, Brett. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Ted.
All right. Have a great night.
All right. You too.
All right. That was my very special guest, Brett Freeman, a great golf teacher professional out of Oklahoma. And best way, as he said, to reach him is to go to freebirdgolf.com. And there's a contact form there, and you can just send a message through there, and he'll be more than happy to reach out to you. You can email through that site as well. And lots of good information. Go and read the site. It's freebirdgolf.com, and you can learn all about some of the great teaching that Manuel de la Torre and obviously Brett, working together for many, many years, have sort of cumulated and brought forth. And he and Chris, of course, who was on last week, talked about a little bit, and Brett in a little bit more detail tonight. And they're going to share that on freebirdgolf.com. So you want to make sure you check out that website. Again, I want to also thank a very special Coach's Corner panel tonight. It was very interesting. All ladies edition, if you will. Nicole Weller, Michelle Holmes, Zoe Allen, and of course, Anna Deletta Daffin. Thank you, ladies, for joining me on the Coach's Corner panel. And of course, they're all part of the Little Golf Train. And if you want to learn more about that and maybe get in touch with a conductor, if you will, in your area, go to littlegolftrain.com. And there's all sorts of information about that if you're a parent and maybe you want to get your youngster into a program through the Little Golf Train. It'll tell you how to go about doing that. Or if maybe you're a golf professional that you might be working with juniors right now in some capacity, but maybe you want to learn more about how to tap into a very valuable resource and maybe become a certified golf conductor on the Little Golf Train yourself. You can also visit that link, littlegolftrain.com, and find out how to become a certified golf instructor. It's definitely well worth it. Nicole runs a fantastic program up in Savannah, Georgia, and she's just a great asset to the sport. So thank you, ladies, again for doing a great job on the Coaches Corner panel. And I want to thank all of you for faithfully tuning in each and every week and joining me here on Golf Talk Live. As I say all the time, I get a great amount of pleasure and enjoyment of working and hosting some very talented golf professionals, both men and women, from all over the country. And as tonight, you've got a great example of two great ladies from overseas that joined in on the fun. So it's not just a U.S. or a Canada or South America. It's a global game. And it's something that we can all enjoy, and everybody's taking part. So let's do what we can to help grow the game, and I'm going to continue to do my part. So I hope you'll join me next week with another Coaches Corner panel. We're going to have a great discussion next week and another insightful guest interview. So I hope you'll join me next week. On that note, God bless everybody. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next Thursday right here on Golf Talk Live. Take care.